If you want to sell cars these days, you need to have a compact crossover. Now it's Infiniti's turn to bring theirs to market. This is the 2017 QX30, and I say their compact crossover, but it's not just theirs. You see, underneath the skin, this is a Mercedes-Benz GLA. But there's more than that going on. Infiniti did have a hand in this, and I'm going to tell you all about it today as we do our first drive of the 2017 QX30. So a lot of people are going to look at the QX30 and tell you that it's nothing more than a Mercedes-Benz GLA with a fancy suit. And they're partly right. Under the skin, there is certainly a lot of Mercedes going on. Under the hood, we have a Daimler 2-liter turbocharged inline 4-cylinder engine, and it's good for 208 horsepower and 258 pound-feet of torque. And it works really well in this application. It's paired with a 7-speed dual-clutch transmission, and it works well. You can put it into economy mode, which it's in right now, but I prefer to pop it into sport. And when you do that, it wakens up a little bit. You get some good noise, it livens the car up a little bit. Now, Infiniti had a hand in tuning various parts of this car. They tuned the transmission. They wanted the throttle tip-in to be a little bit sharper. They worked to tune the suspension on their own. They adjusted chassis tweaks here and there to make this a little bit more their own. But most noticeably, when you look at it, that's when you're going to see that this is very clearly an Infiniti. Up front, you have their signature double arch grille. Out back, you have the double license plate surround. You have those notched C-pillar lamps. You have signature LED daytime running lights. You have signature LED. They call them signature. It's a signature look for Infiniti. And you look at this, and it's very clearly an Infiniti. This has all the design language that the rest of the lineup currently shares. Now, when you sit inside the car, you can now see again that it's Mercedes. The steering wheel looks like it's lifted straight out of a C-Class or a GLA because it is. All of the buttons here are Mercedes buttons. The buttons in the center stack are Mercedes buttons. This knob to control the nav screen, that's Infiniti. The Infiniti font and the screen itself, that's Infiniti. The gauges, though, are Mercedes. The seat controls are Mercedes. The seats themselves are Infiniti. These are, they call them super spinal support. That's not the real name, but they're basically lifted from Nissan as their zero-G seats. So they're comfortable. Earlier in the day, I was spending time with the Infiniti QX30 Sport, and that's the fun one. That's the one you're going to want because the steering is further tuned a little bit more to make it feel like it has added heft. And they did a really good job with it. Even though this has an electronic power steering system, they managed to eliminate a lot of that rubbery fakeness you get on center. Now I'm in the all-wheel drive version, which is the slightly more expensive one, and I can kind of feel that rubberiness dialed back in. There are other changes too out there between the different trims. You have the base version, which comes in a base, luxury, and premium, and it's front-wheel drive. Then you go to the Sport, and they actually drop that 0.6 inches. You can jump up to the all-wheel drive, which raises it above the base one by 1.2 inches. So there's different heights for depending on the different trims you get. Now, if you get the all-wheel drive version, you also get those plastic over fenders. The fascias, front and rear, are different in all the trims. The Sport one is sporty. The all-wheel drive one has almost an Audi all-road, Volvo cross-country look going on with its front and rear fascias. It has different side sills. Stock are 18-inch wheels. You can get optional 19-inchers. All the different trims wear 235 series tires, but the base and the all-wheel drive ones get all season, whereas the Sport gets summers. Now, the base car comes with a 6-speaker sound system, but if you step up to the Sport, you immediately jump to a 10-speaker Bose sound system. The base price, they're going to tout this a lot. You're going to see this in the ads. The cheapest QX30 you can get starts at $29,950. Now, that does not include destination and handling, which is a neat little marketing trick. Also, it's a base front-wheel drive version, which you're never going to see on a dealer's lot. Expect to pay in the mid-30s to the low 40s for one of these. The Sport, equipped in the mid to high 30s, that's the one I like the most. It has a sportier flat-bottom steering wheel. I like that it's a little bit lower. I like that the suspension tuning is noticeably better, in my opinion, without that fakeness on center. The rest of it's going to be the same unless you opt for LED and tech packages. This one has a moonroof. So there are a few things you can do to make yours stand out even further in its respective trim locks. But as it sits, this is a pretty good car. So most importantly, how does this thing drive? Well, this is a pretty good engine. If you've driven a C-Class or a GLA, you know that It's a nice little motor and it's got a lot going on. Paired with this 7-speed dual clutch, it works well for the application. Now, Infiniti isn't going to get the AMG version of the GLA, which is a bit of a shame, but it'd be fun to see Infiniti stuff one of their hotter motors into this and see what they can do and maybe make like a QX30 Red Sport. Don't bet on it, definitely never going to happen. But as far as this one goes, I prefer the Sport, like I said, but the steering here isn't bad once you get past the on-center portion. The roads right now, we're up in Seattle, the roads are beautiful. At the moment, we're stuck behind a little bit of construction and a slow-ass Nissan Frontier, but that's not their fault. We're gonna pass them soon. Earlier in the day, I did have a chance to press the car a little bit. The brakes felt great. It really hauled this thing down effortlessly. This has paddle shifters. Paddle shifters are standard across all the trims, and they're clearly Mercedes paddle shifters because it's with the Mercedes steering wheel. But there's the big old Infiniti grille. If you open the hood, you'll occasionally see pointed stars here and there, but this is an Infiniti product. There's Infiniti badging everywhere. You're gonna get this serviced at your Infiniti dealership. If you didn't know the GLA existed, you wouldn't know that Mercedes-Benz had a hand in it. Well, if you actually sat in any modern Mercedes, you'd have a clue. But the Infiniti badges would throw you off for a second. So in this segment, Infiniti says that they're eyeballing the 30 to 36-year-old young families. I am pretty much that person, minus the income it takes to buy this car. And I would be annoyed as hell if I had this putting my daughter in and out of this every day. It's tight back there. I jumped in the back seat and there's not a lot of room, but there's not a lot of room to be expected in this segment. The BMW X1 doesn't have a ton of room. The Audi Q3 definitely doesn't have a ton of room. The Mercedes GLA also, believe it or not, doesn't have a ton of room. But you don't expect a ton of room with this. So I don't know if Infiniti's targeting the right demographic here, because the people who will actually be buying this are empty nesters. Your grandmother's gonna drive this in Florida. People who don't have kids yet and want to get into a premium brand might do this because they can do so for $30,000, low $40,000, and this is their gateway drug. They're stepping up from their Murano or their Rogue or their Maxima, you know, some Nissan product. They want to stay in the brand. They're gonna go with Infiniti, and here they are. They're not quite ready to shell out all that dough for the Mercedes. Now, I mentioned the base price was low, but once you get into any of the other trims, it pretty much lines up with the rest of the competition. Where it's gonna set itself apart is that exterior styling. So if you like the bold, swoopy lines that Infiniti has to offer, that's where the QX30 will grab you. At the end of the day, it's a good car. It's nothing to get super excited about, but nothing in the segment really revs you up and gets you pumped to drive it every day. Honestly, one that's more exciting is my own CX-5 is a little bit more fun to drive, even though this engine is more entertaining and the seats are more comfortable, but the actual chassis is a little bit more in line with my enthusiast orientation. Would I be happy driving this car on a daily basis? Absolutely. So if you want a sporty looking premium crossover, the QX30, it's a decent place to spend your money if that's what you want. So the average person, when they see this, is going to tell you that this is nothing more than a Mercedes-Benz GLA with a fancy suit, and they're partly right. Under the skin, there's a whole lot of Mercedes-Benz going on. Under the hood,
quarter of a mile, right turn at the end of...
all right.
83.
I gotta talk about the driving experience, but we're not driving. So in this segment, Mercedes, that was a slip of the tongue.